You will notice that it's not just me on the stage here. I'm joined by two colleagues as well, Taavi and Kieren, but I will do more to introduce them as we go through the panel. Now, what I'd like to note is that most of you are leaving, and that's really not a good sign considering how important cybersecurity is. But I guess because I'm not the president, I don't have quite the same draw, so that's fine. Anyway, we will crack on, and let's hope that it doesn't continue to be quite so noisy. So, cybersecurity is the focus of our panel this morning. I'm going to start off. You will notice in your programmes that we were meant to have 4 of us on the stage this morning. Unfortunately, one of the panel has been taken unwell and is unable to make it. So we are filling the space between the 3 of us. Now, cybersecurity is something that I raised last year, and we've kind of got these little things. So those of you that hang around will find out what our little ducks are about. I'm just going to put mine here for the moment. I did an introduction last year to those of you that were here around why cybersecurity is important to each and every one of us. And it was based around Maslow's triangle and the 21st century version of it. So those of you that were here, there's a couple of nods in the audience, will remember that. And this session is titled Update. So I'm going to build on what I said last year and hopefully get another layer as to why it's important to you. So I'm talking to you as individuals, I'm talking to you as developers, I'm talking to you as startups, and I'm going to talk to you as investors as well, because this is going to be of growing importance to you. So it's not just state level, it's not just government level, it's not just business level, but it's also individual level. So it's important to all of us for a number of different reasons. One of the questions that I raise when I'm talking to people is the difference between what is privacy versus security. There are a number of people that think that because their software may be GDP compliant, that's been the latest buzzword, that you will also be secure. Well, I hate to tell you that that's not the case. And security will become more and more important to you as you wish to grow your business and as you wish to take part in larger markets. Why? Well, privacy is the first thing that's happened. But there is now new EU legislation around cybersecurity, and you can Google that, and there's lots of information about it. But if you wish to take part in the European marketplace, you will need to be compliant with the cybersecurity legislation that is recently coming in. And that is to do with a framework that you need to meet in terms of your security, separate to your privacy. So I was in Riga a little while ago talking about security and privacy, and somebody said to me, could I explain the difference between privacy and security? And I said, okay, here you go. So this is one that hopefully all of you will be able to relate to. How many of you live in rented accommodation? Hey, excellent, good. So you will understand this entirely. How many of you have in the past lived in rented accommodation? Right, brilliant. Okay, so even more of you will understand this. I live in rented accommodation. I've been in Estonia for 3.5 years. I absolutely love Estonia, by the way. I think it's just so cool for a number of reasons, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. So I live in a rented apartment. Now, my landlord has access to my apartment, as you would expect a landlord to have, because he is responsible for maintenance, just as the people who look after the cloud or Facebook are responsible for maintenance. So they have access. Now, in my apartment, I have my life, my physical life. I have photographs on the wall, I have books on the shelves, I have a stack of music, I have various other stuff, you know, all my clothes and everything else. But the privacy bit is, even though my landlord has access to the apartment to change the light bulb, fix the washing machine, replace the fridge freezer, etc., what he has no authority to do is to go through my address book and sell all those contacts. What he has no authorization to do is to share my photographs. What he has no business doing is going through my wardrobe and my shoebox and finding out what make of shoes I particularly like and what label clothing I'm wearing. As you'll see, I've got a lovely label on today. I think everybody should have one. Thank you. And he has no business to do that. And that's in the physical world. But it's only recently with GDPR that that has been replicated in the virtual world. Up until a little while ago, there was nothing to stop people sharing my photographs, sharing my data, and especially selling on my contact lists. And also as well, all that stuff around what shoes I wear and what clothes. How many of you, when you log into Facebook, you get the advert for the sales in Next, or you get the advert for the local restaurant that happens to be serving the food that you happen to have in your fridge and all this kind of thing. So in the physical world, my landlord has no right to any of that information and no right to pass it on. So GDPR is about privacy, and the fact that those people who look after my data and my life in the virtual world have no right to sell it on. But what is security? Okay. How many of you, when you left home this morning, locked your front door? Did you not lock your front door, sir? Just checking. Okay. How many of you, I don't know what it's like here, but insurance in the UK is a nightmare. I happen to own a couple of motorcycles, and in the UK, when you insure your motorcycle, you go through a whole tick list, and it says, is your motorcycle parked on the street? Yes. Oh, you won't get insurance then, go somewhere else. Right? No, okay, it's locked in a garage. Is it a brick-built garage? Yes, okay, it's a brick-built garage. Does it have a mobiliser? Does it have an alarm? Is it locked? Is the garage brick-built with a door with a 5-bar bolt on it, etc.? That's security. What I notice, and whoever wrote this app, I hope you're listening, is that the TalTech app for Latitude 59 doesn't have any security. It doesn't have a front door. I can see people nodding. It doesn't have the ability for me to say, log out and protect my information. Now, Facebook does. LinkedIn does. But how many of you in the audience use Facebook? Go on, let's see all the hands go up. How many of you use Facebook or LinkedIn? Yeah, come on. LinkedIn, Facebook, yeah. How many of you, no, keep your hands up. Right, put your hand down only if you sign out every time you leave the application. And we're meant to be the experts. Yeah, absolutely, 2 hands, way, okay? So what we're effectively all doing is we're leaving our front doors wide open because we're not closing and locking those access points. And you think, oh, well, that's all right, because my mobile phone has got a lock on it. It's got a little PIN code thingy or my thumbprint thingy, How many of you have sat in restaurants and cafes and watched your friends going like this to see what their code is on their phone, just out of interest? Yeah, absolutely, yeah. How many of them actually want to pick up your friend's phone and go like this to see if you can get in? Yeah. Okay? So what we're talking about there is, yes, okay, the equivalent of, if you have a house and it has a front door and it has windows, and you leave your front door open, and you're saying to yourself, that's fine, because I have an electric fence around my property. That's your pin lock or your thumbprint. But how easy is it to get through an electric fence or over a fence in the physical world? Actually, it's pretty easy. All you need for an electric fence is the rubber mat from your car. Not that I've done this, okay, I've been told. I Googled it, how to scale an electric fence. You take the rubber mat from your car, you put it over the electric fence, and you just go, and you're in. And the person has left the house, they've left their front door open, they've left their windows open, there's no locks, there's no bars, and you have access freely. They have given you permission to all the information. So what I'm asking in terms of individuals is, how much responsibility do we take? Now, we do it automatically in the physical world now, but I know that if you talk to the older generation, they remember the time when we used to leave our front doors open. Cars didn't used to have locks on them. Now they have automatic locks. You walk away from it and it locks itself within 2 minutes of you walking away, which is great as long as you remember to take the keys with you. Now, what I've noticed is that banking apps generally do the same. They lock you out automatically. As soon as you leave the app, you're locked out. That's the equivalent of walking away from your car and your car locks itself. Or the equivalent on your front door when you leave your apartment and you shut it and it's got one of those Yale-type locks. In the UK, they're all made by Yale. And you shut it and it's locked. You don't need to lock it manually yourself. But how many of you are developing or working with or anything else on software that doesn't allow those? So again, when I come back to my house, I know in the UK, to get insurance, I have to have locks on my doors and windows. If I live in certain areas, I may even have to have bars if I live on the level 0 or level 1. I get discounts if I've got an intruder alarm, which actually I can't use because I've got pets, so they would set it off the whole time. But, I can tick the box and I get a discount. So all these things are required, and it's driven by economy. Now, the reason I've gone through this particular thread, and the reason I'm raising this for all of you, both as people and as developers or startups, is because there is now a growing market and a growing trend for cyber insurance. How many of you have heard of cyber insurance? Hurrah! How many of you are aware of cyber risk? Hurrah! Okay, so you should be up here doing this. I don't know why I'm doing this. So you can fill in the gaps later, okay, and fill in everything that I've forgotten to say. So there were 2 cyber attacks. Okay, this is just to keep it interactive to make sure you're all staying awake here. How many of you heard of the hack, or the not payer, it wasn't a hack, the incident that hit Maersk? Yeah, the big shipping giant, okay, got knocked out. Is there somebody who fancies shouting loudly? Do you know how much that cost Maersk, or at least they're prepared to publicly say? $300 million, which at today's exchange rate is about 280 million euros. 280 million euros because somebody somewhere left a window on the catch. Simple as that. The electric fence failed, the front door was locked, but there was a little window, the catch was left on, they got in, and it cost that business $300 million, 280 million euros. How many of you heard of the recent one in Norway for Norsk Hydro? That was in the headlines recently. Any of you heard of that one? A couple of hands? Okay, yeah, right. This was another incident. Okay, it wasn't a targeted attack. Wasn't anything particular to bring them down. It was just stuff that's out there on the internet that's looking for a way into your house. So it's an opportunist burglar. Okay, and the house next door has got its doors and windows bolted, and you've left your window on a catch. Now, Hydro Norsk was hit by this, and in Q1 only, it has cost them 52 million euros. Okay, just for leaving a window on a catch. And the reason I raise this is because people are now trying to find insurance against this, because if you get hit by that and your business gets hit, that's a really big hit for you. And it's the same as me as an individual. If I was hit and my bank account was emptied, actually it wouldn't do anybody any business, because currently it's about €7.03, which is really why I'm really glad that there's free coffee here. At least I get coffee today. So, but a lot of businesses now are looking at cyber risk and are looking at taking out insurance against these hits. But can you imagine the form that you're going to have to fill in for this? Yeah, good. I can see some people nodding. Good. The penny is beginning to drop. So if I was to look for cyber insurance for myself, it would be along the lines of do all your personal pieces of equipment have virus checker on? How many of you have got virus check on your mobile phones? Ooh, that's a bit worrying. Okay. So I'm not going to insure the rest of you. How many of you use VPN when you're accessing the internet? Hurrah, you'll get insurance. Nobody else will. Okay. How many of you have got a proper password that isn't your cat's name and your date of birth? Oh, that's better. Okay. You may well get a discount. How many of you have actually changed that since 2007? Oh, even better, you probably get another % discount. Because if you're going to look at all this kind of stuff and you're in the insurance, you're only going to insure people, if you think of it like the house, who lock their doors, who secure their windows, who put on the burglar alarm. If I was burgled and all my stuff nicked and I'm filling in the insurance claim form, in the UK, if I didn't have my burglar alarm on, if my windows were not locked and my door wasn't secure, they'd say, well, we're not paying. So as we progress through this, and cybersecurity is now becoming legislated within the EU, you can expect these things to start coming in. And you can expect that you will need to meet some of these requirements. So the challenge is how you do this. Now, there is a growing sector for cybersecurity apps and cybersecurity software. There are a number of startups doing cybersecurity. We have some examples at this particular latitude this year. And then there are those building the actual software and the apps themselves. But the trick is trying to put these two together. Now, again, I'm going to go back to the houses and apartments. I have watched houses and apartments being built, and you may well have done this because there's a lot of it going on in Tallinn. And they throw up these tower blocks, whoosh, up they go. And you'll notice they all have holes in where there are going to be windows and there are going to be doors. But the windows and doors don't come from the people who are putting the cement up. They come from the people over here who are making windows and doors. And these windows and doors come in different shapes and sizes, and they come with different types of locks. The challenge is getting these people to build the doors and the windows that are going to fit in the holes that the people building the buildings are building. Now, some places in the UK, there are standard door sizes, okay? And you can only build a certain size, in which case it makes it very easy for the door manufacturers to fix this. But I think the big challenge that we have within our ecosystem at the moment is exactly that. We've got people building doors and windows, and we've got people building buildings. And actually, the challenge is going to be getting the two together. Because if you need a custom window or you need a custom door, it costs an awful lot more than having a standard fitting. But if we don't have them, then it's going to cause problems, both for you as a business, legislatively, trying to get into the European market as this takes off, but also to you and I as individuals, because that risk is only going to increase. So whoever wrote that TalTech application, it's great, but please, for next year, can you please put a log out option on it so I can lock my door and not leave all my information open to everybody? And it's the same with any of you that are developing anything. You know, when you are developing these things, make sure there is an option that people can lock themselves out. Or do it automatically, like the car that you walk away from and it locks itself after a certain amount of inactivity, like the banks do. So all these things are technically possible because we see examples of them. But for one reason or another, and I understand when you're starting out, security isn't necessarily your primary objective. Meeting those legal requirements is not necessarily something that you're going to think about from day one, but you need to, in terms of being able to fit the doors and windows and the security software that someone else is building. Putting an electric fence around it, as we were saying with those phones, you know, all it takes is you sitting in a cafe somewhere, and people do it a lot in Tallinn. I love the working practices that you have here. Sitting in the cafe, and it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. The president was talking about trust. I love the fact that I can sit in a cafe with my laptop and my phone on a table, and I can trust that if I'm desperate to go to the ladies, I can leave my laptop there, and I can come back 5 minutes later, and generally it's still there. That level of trust that you have with each other is brilliant, but there is always somebody who wants to take advantage of it. Now, they're not necessarily going to take the laptop, but how much does it take just to put a USB stick in? If your USB port is not protected, download everything from your laptop, especially if you use the cloud and all your data is there, and they'll walk away with your entire life. That's the equivalent of my landlord going into his flat and taking everything of mine out of that flat and walking away with it. And it's possible in the virtual world. It's so, so simple. So cybersecurity is really important. Now, the little clock at the back isn't working, so I've got no idea how we're doing. I just presume somebody's going to wave at us at some point. But I think you've probably heard enough from me. Just to let you know that, fortunately for us, but probably not great for you, this session, the Q&A, is going to be somewhere else. It's going to be in the Q&A area. So at the end of this, and I really hope that you've got questions and challenges and that you disagree with most of what I've said, because that's where really good debate comes in. Do please come to the Q&A area and come and talk to us. We are actually relatively approachable, and we love to have a good debate, so please do come and talk to us. But there isn't a roving mic at the end of this session. It will be Q&A in the Q&A session. So I'm now going to cease taking the floor, and I'm actually going to hand over to Taavi. Now, Taavi I met for the first time yesterday. I love this thing about technology. Yeah, he's got one of these as well. So I met Taavi on Skype last night. And obviously, when you're on Skype, you're sitting in a chair and you've got your laptop in front of you. And I thought Taavi was this tall. So when he turns up this morning and he's this tall, I'm like, oh, you're a bit taller than I thought you were. But Taavi, it was great to meet you. I'm absolutely delighted that you're here. Now, this guy is brilliant. He used to work, like me, in the technical environment. Used to be a developer and a programmer and worked with Oracle. I worked with Oracle many years ago as well. And has progressed through his own business, through Rangeforce. And he's going to tell you the story of cybersecurity from a very, very different angle. So the floor is all yours. Oh, there we go, magically. You're being timed. I didn't even look at it. But anyway, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. So let me start from the question. So it's a cybersecurity update. So how many cybersecurity people we have here in the room? Just raise your hands. 10-ish. Obviously, you don't get updates from the latitudes on cybersecurity. How many developers and DevOps people and engineers we got here? Few more. Okay, good. So what I wanted to talk today is discuss around about startups and security. So being a startup founder by myself, it's not always an easy topic, right? Because when you want to build a startup, you want to really make it, big success, which means that you want to have more than 10 customers, probably thousands or millions. Or if you're going to have like 10 customers, you want to make sure that they are really big ones, like a major banks, and you work for them. So the cybersecurity in both ends is pretty important because you want to keep your customers' data safe or your customers' data safe, which is maybe even more important. But especially when you're early stages, you got one little issue. You have no budget for security team. So you have basically to do the same job what the largest, greatest banks do, be as safe because you want to work for them with no budget, no security team. So how it is possible to be secure without security team? I guess that most of the startup people somehow, can recognize the problem. So how many startup people we have here actually? So founders and so you probably know what I'm talking about. And I think it's actually pretty simple. It is possible. So that's all doable. Now let me start from my classification of the cyber issues. I think there is like two major type of the cyber incidents. The first one I call Stuxnet type of incident. If you know the Stuxnet story a few years ago, it was highly targeted attack against the military organization, technology. They used number of 0 days there, highly targeted. And somebody probably from nation states, or at least very well-funded group was behind of that. Nobody knows details, but that's what we know so far, right? So the bad news is that startups have almost no protection for that. You just can't. The good news, or maybe also bad news, is that most of the attacks are not like that. They're very simple ones, and that's the second type. I call it Equifax type. They got, a year ago, a bit more, they got a web server there. They knew that there is vulnerability, patch was available, it wasn't just patched. And major crash happened. So the bad news there is, or the good news is that most of the attacks out there are kind of Equifax type of attacks, and you can actually fight with those. If you run it in proper way, you have a good engineering practices in place, and you, like Pipedrive does. Head of Information Security at Pipedrive, Jesse Wojtkowiak, he said that in Pipedrive, everybody is in security department, and that works. And then you can make sure that you just close all those windows there and make sure that your stuff is patched and you don't do those stupid mistakes. And I think even that if you had money to hire a good security team, even they cannot help you. I mean, still you can't rely only on them anyway. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one, that you can't hire them anyway, because all the reports show that there is a huge shortage of the cyber people. So you have to really fight hard to get actually good people. Every report tells a bigger number, A couple of years ago, the number of openings was 1 million. In this year, it's 3.5. I believe that the next year we're going to see 10 million, which is strange, but anyway. So it definitely tells that there's a massive shortage. Now, even if you are lucky and can hire those people, still it starts from the good engineering. Because as a rule of thumb, there are hundreds developers, 10 operations people, and 1 security person. So that's a range. If security people cannot really guard every developer. If it is badly built, that's it. So if you can think about Great Fire of London, it wasn't about that they had no firefighters. They had enough water and Thames too. That was okay. But the problem was that the city was built in the way that it was almost impossible to stop the fire. And that actually happens also in cybersecurity. If the system is not engineered well, there's almost nothing to do for cyber people too. So it starts from the engineering. Now, the second point here is that especially today, in the area of super fast developments, super fast deadlines, and super fast release cycle, the testing cycle of the systems never going to catch up with the release cycle of the software. So it's just so much faster. It used to be like banks ran the test like once per year. Now it's much more, and startups do it more frequently. But still, release cycle is always ahead, which means that if developer does a mistake there, we got again that window there or door to open there. So the schoolboys can come in and do something very, very embarrassing. Now, what I have observed by talking to the major banks, what they don't tell that officially, but they pen testing teams can find something like around 40% of the issues which are related to very simple mistakes of the developers. Simple ones, user input validation things, super simple ones, easily avoidable by good practices. And finally, even the cycle in more global way, release cycle of new technologies, emerging technologies. Sometimes security teams even not aware that the engineers use Kubernetes cloud provisioning, cloud orchestration tools. So it takes for them time until they manage to put all the security controls into place. So again, it starts from DevOps people, operations people, to make sure that they are absolutely, it's set up in the right way. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, SANS Institute published a new study about cloud security. And when they did it like 2 years ago, the number one issue there was, in case of attacks, was DDoS. DDoS didn't make even to top 6 in this time. The number one was identity theft, and number 2 was misconfiguration of all those orchestration tools. Starts again from the good engineering. So again, it's all doable if you do like Pipedrive. Everybody is in security team or extended security team. The only question is that if you want to do your job right in that security team, you got to have some skills. What about the skills? Developers and DevOps people. Denim Group did a study 2 years ago, and they found that around 11% of the developers have like fundamental cybersecurity skills, 11. So they have heard about SQL injection, but those 11% actually, could choose something about you, defend against it, right? I think what I observed is that in Estonia and Nordics, it's better. We got that number around like 20, 25, so it's much better, but not good enough, obviously. So again, for the startups, if you want to be secure, be competitive, provide services for the large corporations or millions of people, it starts from there. So usually what helps is a hackathon at the beginning, get just for half a day all your developers in one room and let them hack. Obviously make sure it's legal, you got the site there. If you can't find any sites, come to Rangeforce, we're going to help you out. But that helps. And then you're going to find people who are really interested and people who have a skills gap. and then help them to fill those skill gaps, which is hard because that needs bit motivation, but you're going to figure out how to do that. And people who did really well, then give them a little promotion, make them as security champions in the group, so they start to run that drive. So it's coming back to the beginning. The last thing you want to do is being hacked by schoolboys. If state-sponsored group does that, hacks you using multiple 0 days, and it's highly targeted, it's okay, I think. I mean, it's not okay, but you can survive with that message. You did everything what you can. But if you left door open, there is no excuse to anybody, because security starts from the good engineering. Thank you so much. Be safe.
Brilliant. Right, and then we have the third and final now. Kieren is also a fellow Brit, and he gave me some words to say which I'm completely going to ignore for his introduction. Suffice to say, he's ex-Royal Navy, but also Norwegian Navy, and I seem to recall that he has sailed the seven seas and has worked in over 50 countries. And he's done a bit of cyber as well. And he's not going to tell you about the Navy and the frigates and the submarines and the women in every port. Sorry. He's actually going to talk to you about cyber. So, Kieren, you have the last slot. Go for it. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Actually, I'm going to break that promise. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Navy, but in an example to make things understand. But we're talking about a cybersecurity update here, so I thought I'd update you. I have been looking on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I found 63 of you had advertised you're going to latitude 59. I've also found 42 of you have usernames and passwords, which I now own. 10 of them in the last 3 months. So, cybersecurity, once we set that question aside, we can say one thing. It eventually will happen. There will be a breach. There is no divide between your personal and private life, because I'm pretty sure you check Facebook at work, and I'm pretty sure that you do some work at home. So that bit's quite interesting. But the other side is, all of you here, who has read an information security policy? Put your hand up. Cracking, keep your hand up if you wrote it. Oh, look, shocker. One of the divide I think we need to talk about is, I completely agree with Rangeforce. Security is not the IT problem. It's everybody's problem. It's also including the developers. Bring them in at the side. But when we do exercises, we like to make it technical. And then we like to bring in the directors and the strategic bit to say, did we do an exercise? Yes, box ticked, huzzah, let's move on to our next venture. This is stupid, because one of the things you need to do is have the arguments between the development team and the security team and the CEO, because having that argument during the exercise is a damn sight better than doing it when everything is melting around you. Now, as I said, I'm going to break the Navy rule here, but here's a very interesting fact. On a warship, if there's a flood or a fire, if you handle the incident, take charge of the incident, within 30 seconds, we know statistically the ship is safe. If it is over a minute, the ship is lost. The initial reactions of how you handle the incident is so important. It sets the scene for everything. So I'm going to do a little bit of an example, because we had a flood here today. If I was on a ship and I heard the following: flood, 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 flood in the galley. Duty ship's part of team to investigate. Okay, someone's taking charge, someone's leading. I feel worried, but safe. If I heard this, flood! Flood in the, oh, where the hell is it? That initial communications from the start has set the scene. It is going to be a complete cluster. It will be all over the place, it's scrambling, we don't know what we're doing. This is why exercising is important. This is why challenging and testing the environment is important, because we need to know how to react, and it needs to be muscle memory to do eventual things to tick boxes. So I'm going to steal a quote from yourself, the Maersk incident. That was very terrible from a cost perspective, but from my perspective, that was excellent. They actually handled the incident very, very well. They took charge of the incident, they limited it down. Within 12 hours, they had mitigated most of the problems. That was good. So from the incident response side, excellent job. However, that shouldn't have happened. But they're two different mindsets. If the incident response wasn't as good as it was, then it would have been a complete and utter catastrophe. So I have to actually say an apology from my industry within cybersecurity, because what we've done wrong is we've made cybersecurity a cyber issue. And we do it because it's way more sexy than just saying it's a really complicated hack. When I was a head of computer emergency response at Cambridge, I really wish that the hack that I had was some sort of matrix on acid stuff and required me to go and get the CSI team. 90% of the time, the incidents were pissed off ex-employees, ex-girlfriends that didn't like you, ex-boyfriends that didn't like you, or stalkers. That was a big chunk of them. Was I worried about state action? Well, yeah, state action did happen, but as you said, I'm not going to do anything. My team consisted of 3 people and a dog called Colin. I would try and do my utmost. However, animal rights protectors, to stop animal research for cancer research, they may not have the hacking skills, but they did have 3 months of spare time to dedicate themselves to look at me and hurt me. I can teach hacking. I can't teach motivation. Motivating the ability to go over and break me is what I worry about. So I'm going to, as I said, I used to work at the University of Cambridge. And the reason I came to Estonia is because we did an open source intelligence penetration test on real live equipment. We got 30 students from Cambridge, 30 students from Estonia, and the idea was to scan our networks and work out how you could break us. I was completely wrong. I thought, Cambridge University, #1 on the planet, will annihilate them. We did not. No. Because of the motivating factor, and I found this out afterwards. Not only did they have the opportunity to get one over the #1 university on the planet, but my colleague and friend Olaf gave them a fantastic carrot. If you screw over Cambridge University, you don't have to do the exam. Yeah, my team were finishing at 5. They were finishing at 3, 4 in the morning and collapsing. They had a fantastic profile, but they had that motivating factor. That's what we need to worry about. And that's what we need to practice when things go wrong. We need to see how it can be used, how our development can be abused. We need to start thinking in that mindset. And what we've done in cybersecurity is we like to think of these new shiny magic boxes. We've got a firewall. Excellent. We've got an intruder detection system. Tick box, tick box. Where is our development system in Amazon Web Services? Oh, great. And where does everyone work? At home. Oh, good. What does our firewall do then? It ticks a box on a compliance form. We're not actually understanding it. And this actually happened in a real funny example in my naval time. My last mission when I was in the Norwegian Navy, we were doing an exercise with the most modern, most shiniest warship in NATO. Radar signature of a golf ball, lovely, shiny, fantastic. It's like Jeremy Clarkson invented a warship. It's really fast, utterly insane, and nobody entirely understands how it works. I was not on a new, shiny warship. Mine was held together with tape, hopes, dreams, and the willpower of 140 people collectively trying to keep it together. I do remember telling one of the chiefs, "Shall we remove that rust?" And he said, "No, there's nothing underneath the rust." The exercise started at 9 o'clock. At 1 minute past 9, I picked up the radio and went, call sign, this is call sign, 2 missiles inbound, location found, out. I got interviewed after that. There's a saying in Britain called interview without coffee, and that generally means somebody shouting at you for 25 minutes. How did you do this? You must have cheated. You must have got some sort of ninjas out there, swimming in the sea. I've somehow sort of trained dolphins to communicate in Morse code or something. They had all the equipment. They had radar absorbers. They had all of this equipment. But I did something interesting. I phoned the ship up and asked where they were. Anyone here seen Blackadder? Yeah? I was Admiral Melchard. Back! I worked out, due to Facebook, that they were having a watch handover at 8 o'clock. So I made sure I phoned them up, just as one person had come over, they were a bit tired in the morning, at 9 o'clock, and said, "Where the hell are you? This is Admiral Melchard from Northwood. For the love of God, your signal's supposed to have gone at 8 o'clock. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?" "Oh, sorry, sir. Give me it now. Don't worry about that. Give me it now." 54.46 north. Thank you. You know what's really interesting, though? They were very embarrassed. The bridge team were, "Oh, God, we can't tell anyone about this." So the next day, I did it again, but I phoned the engineering room. That's what we've done wrong in cybersecurity we need to break. There is a policy that we have in the military called need to know. That's not actually the full policy. It's need to know with a responsibility to share. If you know something's gone wrong, share with your colleagues, even your competitors in the startup field. Because if it's going to happen to you, it's happening to somebody else. We need to have that sense of responsibility. We take ownership of an incident, we take charge of the incident, but it's our responsibility to society to make sure that everybody understands that we will win if we work together, break down the silos, and actually understand and take ownership of what we've got.
Kieren, thank you.
Thank you.
Where's your duck?
Get my duck out.
So we have 3 of these because there are 3 of us. So in wrapping up, you'll wonder what the ducks are for. There is actually a point to these. Yours is the pink one, isn't it, Taavi?
Yes, mine's pink, yes.
Yeah, you got the blue one, Royal Navy. Okay, so what we thought of, oh, it's gone. There we go, we have to adapt as we're going along.
Yep.
Is that the whole point of cybersecurity is that there's lots involved, but it is about getting your ducks in a row. It's about designing, developing, and doing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.